return, we return, we return, return again. We return, we return, we return, return again and again to love.
Progress.
We return again to love. Ashivenu Adonai Elecha ve'na shuva Chadei Yameinu Kekedem Yalla la 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 Yalla la 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 la. We return, we return, we return, return again. We return, we return, we return, return again.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I'm Reverend Israel Bufardi. I use he, him for pronouns, and I am the interim minister of this congregation. For those who I'm meeting for the first time today, welcome. Even if this is your 500th time coming here, it's only my third or so I welcome you as you welcome me. And to anyone who's new here for the first time, I welcome you here too. It's fun and exciting and terrifying to be new together too sometimes. You find yourself here in the Universalist Unitarian Church of Halifax. We are an open-minded and open-hearted spiritual community. I say that we're an open-minded community because we believe here that there are many ways of knowing and understanding wisdom and truth and knowledge, the divine, and science in this world. That no one religious tradition has it completely right or tied up in a neat package, and so we continue to explore the world together and what it means to move about as a good person, as a person who cares about this world and about other people. That we are constantly asking questions about those things together and making way for new ways of knowing and being. And we say that we are an open-hearted community. Can you hear me like this if I'm standing here? Okay, good. I don't have to go like this the whole time. We say that we are an open-hearted community because we make space for many different identities here. Whether those are different spiritual, religious identities, whether you believe in God or don't, whether you find the concept unimportant, whether you believe in something that is greater than yourself, whether you find inspiration in old texts or new ones, or life or nature or each other. And whether you love someone of the same sex or gender as yourself or not, Whether you move about this world on your 2 feet or whether you need some assistance doing so, we try to make space for all those ways of coming together and being together. No matter how you express your gender and your perfectly imperfect human body, we hope that you will find a welcoming space here. And we're always asking questions about ourselves, I hope, about how to be more welcoming in ways that we cannot necessarily anticipate. And so we learn from each other when we bring different ways of seeing that too. And we're a community, a spiritual community, because we realize that we need each other for this life, simply put. We need each other to discover a connection to something that is greater than ourselves, to know that we are not alone, and to remind ourselves that we learn more about the world when we ask questions together. So I welcome all of us, all of you here, all who wish to commit themselves to those pursuits. We are here too this morning, and this time, this weekend here in this country and in this province, we mark our relationships as people on land, and we acknowledge the history of this land and the history of all the people who have been on this land for a long time. And so as we enter into our service, and not just the people on this land, but the relationships between the people on this land. So as we come into our service this morning, we stop for a moment to reflect that we are on land that is the ancestral homelands of the Mi'kmaq. People who have been living here for a long time and continue to live and love on this land. Land that white people came to and developed a relationship with those people, and the relationship was not always positive for both people. But they did make commitments to each other for how they were going to relate to one another. And though the Europeans who came to this land did not always hold up their end of the bargain, we continue, all of us today, to ask ourselves questions about that relationship and how we can do better and honor the sacred history of this land. I'm going to light our chalice now. We'll talk more about this. But I'm going to light our chalice now to bring us into this time of worship. And let it be for us today a beacon that reminds us of the light in all of us and all things, seeking to break free and be discovered in our midst. I invite you to join me in singing. Here together, you have, some of you should have the lyrics for that on a piece of paper. Do you see that? If you don't have it, perhaps you can find someone to share with. Or if you have it and you see somebody else who doesn't have it, you could offer to share with them. I'm going to invite you to sing Here Together, reminding us why we come together and what has brought us here
just repeats. So we're going to repeat it over and over. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. One more time. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. And my prayer for you is a peace that's true until we meet again.
So here in this place together, we're going to reflect a bit today on covenant. How many of you have heard that word before? If any of you have been here before, I hope you've heard that word before. Covenant is about relationship between people. And not just about relationship, but about the ways that we make and break and remake promises together and try to do better for each other. We are currently right now in the Days of Awe, which is part of the Jewish New Year in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when Jewish people also ask themselves about the vows, the covenants that they have made to themselves and to their understanding of the divine throughout the year, and the ways that they have made and broken promises that they have made, and the ways that they need to do better for themselves and for others. We also, as I alluded to a few moments ago, this weekend here, we celebrated Treaty Day, and also a day to remember the ways that Indigenous people have been treated in this land, in this country. And I was listening to a radio program on CBC Radio, and it was Buffy St. Marie who was speaking, who I had heard about before, and just have always really, really been inspired when I would listen to her speak. And she was talking about these markings of this time, and how important it is to acknowledge harm that has been caused, deep harm, deep wounds. But how important it also is to remember that the Indigenous people living in this land have a complex and rich and beautiful history too. And that's one of the other things we must do at this time of year, she reminded me, that we should also be talking about the amazing accomplishments of Indigenous people. So something I learned, which was cool, maybe some of you know this, was that Indigenous people in Canada invented the rubber ball for playing different sports. But that was just a cool thing. But another thing that I thought that I learned that was really meaningful to me was she talked about, so there was a person named Akuma Keyo. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this person, but they were a chief, and they were also an expert in sort of understanding the land and explaining the composition of the land to white people, to settlers, to colonials. And there was a man named Peter Fiddler who was British, and he was charged with creating a map out west of some of the territories out there. And he partnered with this Akumakeo to create a map. But what was really interesting was that when you look at the maps that were created by Europeans at the time, they would often have borders and lines that depicted like territories and geopolitical lines on territories. And it was sort of like what river is here and what territory begins and ends here, and it's very like rigid. But the map that Akuma Keio helped create didn't just show geopolitical lines, but it showed the people who were in that territory and the shape of the land and the different like ways that the land moved about, but also the ways that the people on that land related to one another. So that was drawn as part of the map. So not just land and boundaries, but the relations between the people on the land. And that to me was really telling, which was that through that lens, through that way of seeing the world, the most important thing isn't just the land and who it belongs to, but the people who are on it and how they relate to one another, and that's what defines the land. So we have here the history of the peace and friendship treaties, which weren't just one treaty, but were many, that define the relationship between the people who came to this land and the people who were on this land. And something that I want us to think about as I continue throughout the day today is what we are talking about is covenant, like I said before, and relationships, and how we make mistakes, and how we must come back to the promises that we make to one another. But I'm also going to be talking in a little bit about the Jewish New Year and Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, which is the word atonement. If you look at it, it looks like at-one-ment. So it means coming back to one, or coming back to your center of your vows, of your promises that you make, not just to other people, but to yourself and to your center. What some people think of as a divine thing, but really is about like what you care most about in this world and what you value. And so the process of all of this is about constantly being self-reflective and about how to come back to those things that you have named as being important. The song that we're about to sing is called Hene Matov. And the text of the song is how good it is for people to dwell together in peace. It's from a Bible quote, actually. Sometimes it's translated as peace or unity. But how good it is for people to dwell together in unity or in peace and friendship. And so as we sing it, I invite you to think about what is good about that. Not just what is good about that, but how we make it so through our actions and the ways that we relate to one another. It's number 392 in the Gray Hymnal.
Just a little technical thing. I know you said that you're not able to hear us. Can you hear me through this mic? Just say yes or no on the chat, please. Yes. Okay, so you can hear me through this mic. Can you try talking through there?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear him when he speaks? Can you talk again?
Can you hear me?
We can hear. Okay, then we're good. Thank you.
So this is an example of us making space to include the people who cannot be here physically in this room with us. So what it means to be together, why it is good, and how we continue to make it so, because it always isn't good.
you feel comfortable. We're not going to do the Hebrew part. I'll sing this repetitively, and you can join in when you feel comfortable. How good it is and how pleasant for people to dwell together. How good it is and how pleasant for people to dwell together. How good it is and how pleasant for people to dwell together. How good it is and how pleasant for people to dwell together. Good and pleasant, people in peace together. Good and pleasant, people in peace together. How good it is and how pleasant for people to dwell together. How good it is and how pleasant for people to dwell together. Good and pleasant, people in peace together. One more time. Good and pleasant, people in peace together.
So before the kids go to RE, we have a brief story that I wanted to tell you. And so I have a question for you. How many of you have a well? Like get your drinking water from a well? How many of you lost electricity recently? Who have a well? Wells are a pretty cool, amazing thing to get water and sustenance from the earth. But when you have to, maybe you had to, did any of you have to carry buckets of water? Yeah. That's hard work, I think. And maybe when you were carrying the buckets of water, you were wishing that they were a little lighter, or that they would maybe leak a little, and you wouldn't have to carry quite so much. Maybe you had to go back and forth. I don't. Did any of you? Who had to do that? What was it like? What was it like?
It was heavy.
Yeah.
There were many trips to make it not so heavy.
Yeah. So this is a story. This is a story about a woman who lived somewhere a long time ago before there was electricity. Or maybe it's a story about today, about a person who lived somewhere where there just wasn't electricity for whatever reason and had to carry their water. And this woman lives somewhere, and she had to go up to the top of a mountain every day to get her water, and then come all the way back down the mountain with 2 buckets of water. Every day, up to the top and back down, up to the top and back down. She did this once a day because it was hard and it was heavy, and the walk took a while. And she carried the 2 buckets on her shoulders with like a long pole. Has anyone ever seen someone do that? You have a pole and then you put the 2 buckets. And every day the same path, traveling up and down the same way with 2 buckets. And she always put the same one on the right and the same one on her left. And the bucket that was on her right on this side had a little small crack in it. And so as she would come down the mountain every day with the bucket on her right, it would leak. And by the time she got down to the bottom of the mountain, it was about, let's say, half full. And she did this for a long time. And she never really was bothered by it. And it wasn't just because the bucket was a little bit lighter as she went down. Does anyone know why she wasn't bothered by it? Have a guess?
Yes, because she was watering the plants along the way.
Yes. You've heard the story before. That's cool. So, how many of you have heard this story before? Okay, well, let me explain it to you. So, yes, she was watering plants, you're right. But it's not really so much about the plants. It's about the process of going up and down and about the crack in the bucket itself. So the bucket itself with the crack discovered that it had a crack. And it became very distressed in the story about the fact that it could not carry a full bucket of water. And it felt bad because this woman was going up and doing all this work of getting water and coming down with only a half-filled bucket. And it cried out, asking for forgiveness for its crack, for its imperfection. And the woman looked at, for anyone who's carried a bucket, if you were to be carrying a bucket and the bucket suddenly cried out at you, how might you react? You might be a little surprised. So, of course, the woman was very surprised by the bucket talking, but she was also surprised that the bucket was upset. And she looked at, because the bucket is crying, saying, I'm so useless, I can't even do the one job that I was created for in this world. I was created to hold water, and I can't even hold water properly. Every day you get down to the bottom of the mountain, and I'm half empty. And the woman looks at the bucket and says, you're not half empty, you're half full, first of all. But secondly, you have no idea, do you? And so she holds the bucket high above her head. And when she's sort of halfway down the mountain and points out the path, and what do you see on the side of the path? What does the bucket see? You just told me. Beautiful flowers, not just flowers, but like the most magnificent flowers you had ever seen. And not just flowers either, but food. Plants that can be eaten and herbs that have medicinal properties and all various things, not just to people too. Plants that have properties for animals. And so the woman points out to the bucket that the only reason those flowers were able to grow was because every day when she walked up and down, she would sow seeds and knew that the steady drip of the bucket would be enough to water those plants. Just a little drip all throughout the path. And that was enough to help those plants grow. And of course, it wasn't just the water that helped the plants grow either. It was the sun. And the fact that the woman had the foresight to plant those seeds. And the fact that she chose the right seeds for the climate and all that kind of stuff too. But for the first time, even though the bucket was only half full, it felt completely full upon hearing that truth. Because it knew that it was helping to create a more beautiful world through its crack, through its imperfections, not in spite of it. And so I want you to just think a little bit about how all of us can do that. And we'll talk more. I invite you seated to sing Spirit of Life. It's number 123 in the gray hymnal.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Come to me, come to me.
Here in this space with all of the various different brokenness that you might carry in your heart, in the bucket of your soul, and all of the ways that your bucket might feel a little bit less heavy too. All of the ways that you discover the flowers and the plants and the things that you are growing in this world and rejoice for them. Know that those things are welcome here in this space. All of who you are. So with everything going on in your lives and in our world, we take some time now just to be with those things. To lament what needs to be lamented and to celebrate what we must celebrate for each other, and to hold space for the things that we're still making sense of. So if you have something on your heart today, a joy, a sorrow, or something that might be called a complex truth, I invite you to come up and to place a stone into our well of community, the waters that hold us and heal us. I invite you to come up and place a stone for a joy, a sorrow, or a complex truth. I invite you to speak aloud if you wish. You don't have to. You can come up silently. And because we need to make space for everyone here, I invite you to, as a spiritual practice, to practice being brief with your words. And I mean brief. I'm going to model it for you. So, I'm going to place a stone. This is for the hurricanes and the ways that people's safety and sense of home has been affected. Anyone who wishes to come up now, I invite you to.
For family and belonging, I'm going to have a little reunion next week. I have a family. I have a brother. It's been a long time. And, I'll do my best to keep the place clean.
For renewed connections.
For the First Nation children.
For the children. If you want to speak into here, you can too.
2 Sundays ago, I had made an ambiguous announcement on purpose, saying that the word Leela means divine miracle in Indian mythology, and that divine miracle was going to happen that night. So those who knew what it meant did. For those of you who did not know what it meant, it referred to my daughter, whose name is Leela. She was coming that night to the airport. She did come, she's here, and so is my wife, Elizabeth. So that's what that divine miracle announcement was about.
Miracles are in our midst every day.
For my father, who's suffering from end-stage liver disease.
And for all that we carry, all that is carried by you and by all of us in this world, all of the joys, sorrows, and complex truths, the ones that words cannot express, I drop this final stone into our well. May we all know that we can be held together in community. I invite you to take a moment and to just let what I'm saying come to you. And I'll invite you to sort of meditate on it, if you will. I submit to you that brokenness is writ into the fabric of creation. It is a part of who we all are and what this world is. Right now we are in the Jewish calendar in the days of awe, in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. A celebration of a remembrance of the creation of the world. The days of awe because it is a time to marvel and be grateful for how improbable it is that you even exist. But also to remember that creation is messy and chaotic. And in the midst of creation, we can feel lost and even broken. There's part of the mystical Jewish tradition says that to create the world, to create the beauty and light in the world, that the creator, that the divine force had to literally break itself open and let light come forth into the world. And that light came forth into the world like pieces of broken glass that were scattered everywhere. And that it is the job of creatures in creation, meaning you, to go about the world and find those pieces of light, to help each other find them. And so I invite you now to take just a few moments during this song to find those pieces of light and reflect on where you might, in yourselves, and to think about where you might find those in the world. The late, great Leonard Cohen said that there is a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. So see your life as an opportunity to let that light in and to find it too, even when you're most disappointed. You're invited to sing number 6 in the gray hymnal, or just listen.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
I invite you to take a few moments of silence now, just to reflect. There's power in sharing silence together. I think it's really important to remember that we're all imperfect, which is an understatement. But it's easy to forget that sometimes, I think. That's why I brought up covenant earlier, one of the reasons. And because covenant is this constant reminder, not only of our imperfection, but of the fact that we need each other people. We can't be imperfect alone. I'll say it. I'm going to expand on that. So, I told you one of the creation myths, one of the creation stories in mystical Judaism about the creation of the world, and for light to be created, there had to be something broken. And I love creation stories and creation myths because even though none of them might be real, they might not be scientifically accurate in that kind of sense or historically accurate, there's just so much truth to all of these stories. There's another one that I really love, and it's a midrash, which is a Jewish study of the text of the Bible, and it tries to explain all the different ways that the world was destroyed and then recreated, and trying to explain why that happened. And it said that when the world was created, the Creator created the world and built it up like a nice perfect structure. Because if you believe that there's in this myth that there is a perfect creator who knows everything and can do everything perfectly, right? That they're going to create this perfect shiny thing, like a nice beautiful tower. But they kept building it and it kept collapsing. And it was because when they created it, they forgot to account for imperfection. They forgot to account for the fact that the things that they put into it it wasn't just a static thing. It wasn't like this. It was a living, breathing organism, this earth, of imperfect things that were going to do things that didn't always make sense and fit into a neat plan. And so so they had to go back and recreate things a handful of different times. And finally, actually, no, they never got it right. And that it's the job of creation, of creatures, to be constantly renegotiating creation with the knowledge of their imperfections. So we're in the middle of it. That's from a mystical tradition, so it doesn't have to make complete sense. In fact, it shouldn't. You should leave here thinking about that and still trying to make sense of it later. Let me put it this way. I have a toddler. She loves building towers with these magnetic tiles and building them up. And when I do it, I like to do things very intentionally, and I like to build the tower and make it perfectly symmetrical and all this stuff. And then she comes over and looks at it and is like, "Whoa!" and knocks it over. And I might be annoyed by that. But then what happens is that we get to rebuild it together. And the being together is not about building the perfect tower. It's about me spending time with this thing that's growing up in front of my eyes that I'm never going to like. Every day is this magical adventure of getting to discover something new, and I will never have the same experience twice. And I get to know her better and myself better as we build these towers together. And they fall over every time. But we keep doing it. My favorite thing about that midrash that I just told you is that the creator, or the force of creation, or the source of life, or the spirit of life, or whatever you like to call it, is not perfect itself. It makes mistakes. That the world the fundamental essence of the world is imperfect and flawed, or just unpredictable maybe, or just a mystery that is worth us spending our time trying to get to understand with the short amount of time that we have to understand it. So even if that life itself, or the universe, is totally, is not a supernatural thing at all to you, it's still a mystery that is worth getting to know and being a part of the shaping of it. So, this is what's special to me. So, I didn't even, one fundamental thing I didn't tell you is that, so, you really haven't gotten to know me too well. We're still sort of mysterious to each other. I might still be mysterious to you, and a lot of you are pretty still mysterious to me, and I'm thirsty. And so I look forward to uncovering those mysteries. But one thing I want you to know is, so I was raised Catholic. My dad's family is Italian. I was raised Catholic. But on my mother's side of the family, I have some Jewish ancestry, but I wasn't raised with that. And when I finally discovered that it was part of who I was, it's something that I became really interested in. So even after I kind of went through this process of being a believer and an unbeliever and being an atheist and then being a humanist and then being agnostic and then just wanting to discover what the world had to offer, and then returning to a spiritual center, even if that was not motivated by a supernatural force, trying to make sense of all those myths and things from my past, knowing that these things have a deep and ancient history. Like I said, even if they're not real, they're still true because they reveal so much about the human condition and about what humans care about. But the reason I'm telling you this is because the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, are really meaningful to me because it's this period of deep introspection, especially during this time called the Days of Awe, like I said before. Developing a deep sense of awe for yourself in creation as an imperfect part of it, knowing that you make mistakes and asking yourself constantly, how can I do better? This is a process that this country is going through too. Especially right now, as we reflect upon the things we've reflected on this weekend. And part of that is the vows that are made, so the promises. So whether those are actual treaties that were made between Europeans and indigenous people, promises to be in relationship with one another, or whether we're talking about the promises we make to each other as a community or as coworkers or with our families and our friends. That those vows need constant reassessment. And the reason that I told you this bucket story and brought up all these ways that creation is imperfect is because I don't think that brokenness is valuable just in and of itself. I don't think that making mistakes and not fulfilling your vows or your promises is good in and of itself. Harm is harm, especially when people's lives are involved and livelihoods and feelings of safety. We can really harm each other as individuals, but also the systems that we're a part of can do great harm. That's not something to celebrate. However, having a sense of brokenness, recognizing that brokenness is important and can be seen as productive, because brokenness, or our acknowledgement of brokenness within ourselves and our systems, is the thing that calls us to want to examine our world, is the force that makes us want to do better. It reminds us that creation and destruction go together. That it is through the cracks that we follow the light. It is through the cracks that we can determine how we want to make our world better. So for instance, a hurricane knocking down a tree in your yard or in a park might make us re-examine, how do we want our shared green spaces to look? Do we want to have a landscaping mentality or a what's it called? Permaculture mentality, where you let the natural sort of laws of the land dictate how you put things on it, where you shape the land in conversation with the land, where you have a relationship with the land. A tree falling can be dangerous, but it can also be an opportunity for us to re-examine things. A broken vow is an opportunity to create something new that can be better. So ultimately, I think for me, I think the ancient storytellers wanted us to reflect on those things. And to know that being a part of imperfect creation is about being in constant discernment. And to remember that if the bucket doesn't have a crack in it and it remains full, the water will eventually become stagnant and full of things that make it dangerous to drink. And so we must let it out so we can water something new. And we must use those cracks to find the light. Our song that we will close out with is We Return. We return to the song as we listened to it in the beginning. But one more thing that I will just briefly say is return comes from the word teshuvah in Hebrew, which is often translated as repentance, which I don't like. But it's really more, return is more accurate. It's a call to return to those values and return to the relationship that is forged through them. That's the origins of this song. So if you want to try to sing along, you're welcome to, or you can just listen.
We have spent. Pardon? We are going to sing a different song. Yes. And for you at home, can you please mute yourself?
It's okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We return We return, we return, we return, return again and again to love, love. We return again to love. So there's an echo to this song as well if you want to do a little echo with me. We return, we return, we return, we return, we return, return again. Beautiful. We return, we return, we return, return again and again to truth, to truth, truth, we return again to truth. We return, we return, we return, we return, we return, return again. We return, we return, we return, return again and again to you. We return again to you. We return again to you. We return again to you.
The baskets, I'll get them.
Robin, can you please mute yourself because the noise that you're making is really disruptive?
Oh, my apologies. I thought I was on mute. I'm very sorry.
So return again to love. Before COVID, once a month, our offertory that was collected in our sanctuary was for a different organization outside the church. The committee hasn't met yet to decide what the first one should be, but I thought perhaps it would be appropriate on this Sunday following Treaty Day and the second National Recognition of Truth and Reconciliation that we could take a collection today for the Mi'kmaq Friendship Center. If you would rather donate directly to the church and you're not pledged, you can do so by e-transfer at treasurer@uuch.ca. It's on the website. Very brief announcement this week, which really went out on, most of which went out on UU Info. I have, the Thanksgiving potluck is next week. I have, then there's a sign-out sheet, a very old-fashioned pen on a clipboard sign-up sheet in the coffee room. Or you can email Paige. Her email address is in the newsletter, in your directory. Or if you don't feel like looking anything up and you can remember something, if you email president@uuch.ca, I will forward it to Paige, who is coordinating the potluck way down in the valley where she lives and works on the weekends, so she can hardly ever get to church. And we look forward to coming back together in community on Thanksgiving, a week from tomorrow. I also, yesterday, when I was in the church, somebody dropped by with a poster for an event at Spencer House this Thursday, and it is specifically for seniors to help them navigate the assistance the province is giving post-Fiona. I know, I don't remember the time off the top of my head, but it's this Thursday at Spencer House on Morris Street, and the poster's out there on the little table in the coffee room. At least I hope it is. That's where I left it yesterday. Thanks.
We close out our time together by singing Here Together one more time. The second part.
That's the right song, right?
That's the right song.
Oh, let's get all the pages, right? Oh, 1 second, everyone. This happens. There we go.
If you'd like to rise in body or spirit to sing, I invite you to do so. Or do whatever makes you feel comfortable.
We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. Let's do that again. Ready? We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. And my prayer for you, and my prayer for you is a peace that's true until we meet again. You sound lovely. We good?
You don't remember the other song?
Oh, we have another one?
I'd be honored if you came in.
No, well, I was very happy to be able to do that.
And how was the Zoom experience?
It's been good. Yeah. So far, so it sounded today they might have had some issues, but
I really want to make it better.
Exactly. Well, normally you have someone working it, right?
We have someone we're hiring who's gonna.
Okay, well that will.
Which is her brother.
That'll definitely make it better.
Yeah.
Okay, well, very nice to meet you.
From where, sir? Ontario.
you know already.